Okay,
Um,
welcome to my broadcast channel. This is Brendan Lee, or Coin Storage Guru, and we met each other a while back, and we've been having some great conversations since then. So why don't you introduce yourself?
yeah, so my name is Brendan. I live in Australia. I have been an engineer for about 15 years now. Got interested in Bitcoin very heavily after having some health issues last year, and have since kind of made it a bit of a mission to learn as much about it as I can. And, and it's not that, well, actually, it wasn't really even a conscious decision. It was just the more that I learned, the more I was intrigued, and it just kind of drew me in, like being sucked up into the void.
Yes, that happens. Yes. Right. And in order to be successful in Bitcoin, you need to have a comprehensive understanding of Bitcoin.
Yes. Yes.
But you can't really, because there's a lot.
There's way more than, and what you gain a comprehensive understanding, or what you think is a comprehensive understanding of how something works, and you really get your head around it, and then you discover that it's just one way of doing that thing, and there are myriad ways of doing the same thing, and we haven't even started exploring even 1% of what's possible with this. So.
Yeah. So you made a very nice offer to me last night, which is you said that you would discuss some of your mental health issues on the show. It's okay
Yep.
if you still want to back out, but I thought that was an interesting idea. So I would like to hear your story.
Okay. So I guess what I was thinking, because you know how I typed half a page into your Telegram about what happened. It's really actually the first time that I've ever written it down, and I read back through it, and I thought it's actually a pretty good, description of exactly what happened that day, and that I would just read it out, and we can kind of start from there. But so basically, what happened to me. And it's possibly not the kind of mental health issues that most people would be expecting, but it certainly had knock-on effects that caused some of those more typical issues. But so basically, I had what I call a traumatic experience. So I had been working in the battery industry for almost 3 years, so designing lithium-ion battery packs and battery management systems for electric vehicles. The company I was working for had not been going well, and had basically shut down their operation in Australia, gotten rid of all of the staff except myself and the boss guy. And that was basically my entire team that I'd been building for 18 months. And so obviously that was pretty stressful. But then we had to go and do a show. And so I had to fly to Thailand. And for that show, we needed all this gear. I carried all this gear to Thailand. I noticed on the plane I was getting sick. And I know, actually, I'm not even reading this thing now. I'm just recounting the story.
No, it's okay.
I arrived in Thailand. I lugged, I think it was 80 kilograms of stuff to this show. And then as soon as I got to the show, I got sick, basically needing to go to the toilet every kind of, let's say, 15 minutes, and severe kind of diarrhea. And the guys were there just like, go, get out of here, go to your hotel, whatever you've got, we don't want it, just be gone. And so I went back to my hotel, which thankfully was only 500 meters up the road. And I basically locked myself in my room for 3 days, and I lost 8 kilos. You know, I think that's the sickest I've ever been. And then on coming back to Australia,
Okay, well, wait.
better.
First of all, let me say clearly I mistitled the episode because this is not merely a mental health issue, but that that we there it is a mental health issue as well. But it's I shouldn't have said. I should have just said
Yeah. Oh no.
your entire the health of your entire system. Yeah.
Absolutely. This was a systemic health issue. So one of the things that happened is on the third morning, I went to a hospital and they just gave me some industrial strength antibiotics. So whatever it was they gave me, after they injected it into me, I had like, I couldn't even see straight. Like it was some crazy stuff. So anyway, I came back to Australia. I got home. I said to my wife, I'm going to take this. I still had this 80 kilos of stuff with me. I said, I'm just going to take this and dump it at the office. I was basically in the process of writing a resignation letter almost. And I started noticing I couldn't keep track of my thoughts, and that, you know, you have an internal monologue when you're writing or doing things. You kind of think you hear the words that you're telling yourself in something of your own voice. That voice started to just go off the rails crazy, and just starting to repeat kind of random syllables into my head. Rah, rah, rah. I remember at the time thinking I should write down what it's saying, because it kept saying the same thing over and over. It was extremely weird. But then I started noticing that I was losing the ability to find memories. So I was trying to find like things like where I lived, what does my house look like? And I was unable to draw those forward. And so I panicked. And I called my wife. I said, and she says that when she first got that first call, she thought someone had a gun to my head, because I was talking like a cyborg. I need help. My brain is not working. And so anyway, she didn't even know where my office was. But thankfully her mother did. She called her mother, who came out and saw me being loaded onto the ambulance. And the ambulance guys, the paramedics said I was fine. They said, you have an elevated heart rate. They thought I was on drugs, and you know, kept asking me what I'd taken, and I said I've taken antibiotics. I gave them, my wife had the prescription that I'd been given by the guys in Thailand. Anyway, I got into the ambulance, and my speech center began to shut down. And so what was happening was I would try to talk, but it would come out like this. And so this extremely like labored exchange of information. And it was, when I think back on it, it's actually quite, you know, I can laugh about it now, which I'm very happy about. But at the time, you know, I was in a black panic. You know, I thought
humor is tragedy plus time, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Anyway, by the time we got to the hospital, my entire speech center, like I couldn't control my vocal cords at all. And so I was doing this uncontrollable, like moaning, just continuously. And I had people coming and asking me to be quiet, and I was kind of panicked. I could write, and I was saying, I can't stop it. I don't know what it is. And then a psychologist came up and she asked me to close my eyes. And as soon as I closed my eyes, it just stopped. Opened my eyes again, shut my eyes, and I was able to sit there in silence. And so I just did that. I just kept my eyes shut. They wheeled me around. They grabbed my wrists. And then when I heard my wife arrive, I opened my eyes and it didn't start again. But by then I couldn't make any sound at all. I could moan, I could make these noises, but I had no words by that point. And so in hospital, they put me in a stroke ward. They thought, well, they couldn't identify what was wrong initially. And then they said it was, I eventually got onto someone from neurology, and they told me it was something called functional neurological symptom disorder. And before I even said anything, they said it predominantly happens in people who are under an exceptional amount of stress, and it can commonly occur after receiving a big dose of antibiotics. And so what happens is that the antibiotics basically wipes out everything in your gut. And so me already being completely like dehydrated, you know, nothing left inside, then to take like this bleach antibiotic that just killed anything that was left, it somehow caused some kind of imbalance in hormones. And they say that they think it probably just increased blood flow to a particular part of the brain, and something stopped working. Some synapse became unavailable that was needed for that to work. And
yeah,
but that it would only take 3 days to get better. And I just had to practice my word. You know, they came around every 3 hours and they did speech therapy. And yeah, they were right. Within 3 days, I was back on my feet. Took me a little bit longer than that. So I had 2 weeks off work after that. And for a few days, even kind of going outside was a little bit too much. But I've made a full recovery. So, you know, but that experience.
Excuse me, you said you've made a full recovery?
Well, from the speech issues, you know, certainly.
Yeah. Okay, well, glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of my crazy story. And that kind of leads into what we were planning to talk about, which was.
But you also said that this is related to your inspiration to focus on learning everything about Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think back on it, and it's like that experience was kind of the turning point. So before then, I hadn't really. I was watching Bitcoin. I knew what it was, but I had never bought any. I knew, it's a chain of blocks kind of stuff. And then I think I went back and looked at the dates, and it was about 2 or 3 weeks later. So it must have been basically as soon as I was well enough to start using a computer again, I've basically gone and taken the fastest path to purchasing Bitcoin and just getting into it. And I remember I got on Reddit and I subscribed to Bitcoin, BTC, cryptocurrency, and just all these different subreddits. And because my work, you know, they kind of were very wary of what had happened to me after the trip, and so they just basically kept paying me, but I had no work to do, and so I basically was being paid full time, and I was sitting in an empty office with zero distractions, and all I did all day every day was learn Bitcoin. And I watched, like, you know, James D'Angelo's original videos. I think they were enormously helpful in gaining, like, at least a first level understanding of the complexity of how many moving parts there are in Bitcoin. And I just got into it from there. And that's kind of how I then learned. So I bought my first purchase of Bitcoin was 4 days after the Bitcoin Cash hard fork. I didn't buy any Bitcoin Cash. I didn't know what it was. You know, as far as I had read, it was a scam. And so, and then I that was when I started to, I thought, wow, I've got digital peer-to-peer electronic cash. I'm going to use it. And I went online and I bought something that cost $16 and the fee was $6. And I thought, what the hell is this? And so that was kind of when I started, you know, I'm an engineer. I come at things from a very, like, first principles perspective. I was like, well, what's the reason for this? I always heard that Bitcoin was, like, almost free. Go on the website, bitcoin.com, or bitcoin.org, I should say. It was right there, you know, fast and cheap transactions. And it took 6 hours for $6 to confirm. Anyway, I started learning about, you know, I was reading about SegWit, But because I had inadvertently put one foot in both camps by subscribing to both RBitcoin and RBTC, I very quickly landed on the side of RBTC. Like when you look at the problem, I don't know. I guess to you and me, increasing the block size is the simplest solution that ever, right?
Well, I always thought, obviously, why would you even have that? It's a silly thing to put in there in the first place. It was just like an arbitrary number that they just did for no reason. So yeah, that was always my understanding of what was going to happen with Bitcoin, is that eventually there would not be an arbitrary limit on the amount of information being processed by the network.
Well, when I learned that it was limited to 1 megabyte per block, I couldn't understand. I thought, well, why? I have a device in my pocket that can download 500 times that every 10 minutes and store a megabyte every 10 minutes for like 50 years. Why are we limited? So, but anyway, that's how. And then basically I looked at it, and I'm of the perspective that it's the goal is not even to provide working alternatives to peer-to-peer electronic cash through Lightning and Liquid and things like this. The goal is to turn Bitcoin into a cluster of unusability and kill it that way. And if you wanted to do that, that's a great way to attack the situation, like to come at it.
Okay, well, who knows what is going on behind the scenes, because to me, what happened in Bitcoin was a lot like the story you just told me about your brain. And there was nobody trying to destroy your brain. It's just that
is true.
Something stopped working, and the entire system was deranged for a period of time.
That is, yes.
And
so the antibiotics came in, and thinking they were doing the right thing, they washed out all the guys I needed to rebuild after the sickness, and things fell to chaos.
Yeah. And from my perspective, that's what it felt like. It felt like I don't know what was behind this, right? But to me, it seemed like completely stupid ideas just took over. Okay. And whether that happens, I think that can happen naturally, but I think that it can also happen because of some concerted effort behind the scenes. But who knows? What, from my perspective, retarded ideas took over, and it was like people would just start making fun of you for saying, why aren't we scaling Bitcoin?
And I've read so many comments about how toxic that was becoming, even well before. Well, I guess it was toxic for a long time, even before the split, and has become, I think, even more toxic since. And again, in terms of the mental health of the people in the industry, that's a serious problem. When you're engaging in debate with people every day, but it's like debate where you're talking about, well, I believe the book should be read front to back, and no, but it should be read back to front. It's the same book. The same stuff is inside, and we're just arguing about semantics, I think. But yet it becomes so tribal because it is an absolute. Like every decision that you make is an absolute in Bitcoin. You're going to go to 128 megabyte blocks. Well, that's an absolute. If the rest don't follow, you're on your own, and you've made the absolute decision to follow that path. Alternatively, if you choose not to implement that and you are left on your own, that's because you made the absolute decision not to follow that. And
Okay, so this is a good point because yeah, it's like it was so weird because how do you even respond to that? So I've been trying to make videos that are kind of like just get, for getting the attention of people who are still thinking, like much less explaining Bitcoin to people, really just like breaking through the craziness. And uh and part of this happens because uh people aren't thinking enough about Bitcoin as a game, and they're not thinking about what the other players can really do. So like when Bitcoin Cash first came out, there was like this propaganda war against it. And once again, who knows, was it a conspiracy or did everybody just mind control each other to believe that the developers are the leaders, regardless of what their decisions have for the overall economics of Bitcoin, right? That's
Yeah.
to me that's what's
I
wrong.
actually don't know what is the scarier proposal. Is like the multiplication of stupid upon stupid to get to where they are, or something insidious. I can't decide which I'm more scared of.
So, but you have to think about Bitcoin like a game, and you have to
Yeah.
think about
Oh, absolutely.
how other people are likely to respond, because you can't control them. So they can you have to think about what they're going to do,
Yeah.
because strategy in Bitcoin is about it's well being not just understanding how Bitcoin works, but being creative, like working within
Absolutely.
the rules. So
Absolutely.
so it was a cult style of organization, because the whole idea was that these core developers, they're the thinkers and everybody else is the
They've,
followers, and
they've
any
got the
sort of
degree.
objection, any objection to that was they couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And to me that is that's that's not evil, that's just stupid. Well, it's both. I mean, it is not just evil, it is also it's just idiotic also. I mean, I'm a big believer in the banality of evil, and to me the Bitcoin world has always felt like it is full of clueless people wandering around saying all kinds of crazy things about Bitcoin, and the market sometimes would really reflect I would say would appear to reflect a complete lack of understanding about
Oh,
Bitcoin.
so that's a really interesting thing that you say, because that is really, I very distinctly call like a really important moment for me in my journey. I was arguing with someone in our Bitcoin, and they were saying SegWit is a scaling solution, and I said SegWit isn't a scaling solution. I said SegWit just gives you like about a 50% or 40% increase in the number of transactions you can fit in a block, but takes all the signatures out. Like, I just explained it, and the guy said, "Are you a dev? You're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about." And I was kind of taken aback, and I thought, well, I know one thing. I know I'm not an idiot. I'll back myself as not an idiot 7 days a week. I believe I do know what I'm talking about, and I believe that the gentleman who I have just been engaging with is under some kind of mind control, and that he is just repeating what he is told to say, either by being paid to do that, or by simply, as you say, not having taken the time to really get a meaningful general understanding of how the Bitcoin network functions.
Okay, well, let's go back to that, because I don't believe that people are paid to say things. Or I should say, I think that people pay people pay themselves to say things,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
they are they're kind of tricked into putting themselves in a position where they either have to continue to promote the narrative behind the choices that they made,
Mm. Mm.
rather than admit that there's some kind of agnosticism about it,
Yeah,
right?
they have to back themselves.
And
Just like me, they got to
yeah,
back themselves. And
yeah,
they've made the decision that Bitcoin Cash is a scam. Anybody who tries to say that the people handing this information down to us are wrong is an idiot, and he's trying to trick me into doing something I don't want to do. And he doesn't even know what that thing is. He just knows that he's got to be wary of me. I don't know.
and this is why you need a comprehensive understanding of Bitcoin, because the investment decisions which you have to face depend on it, because you can be presented with a decision that uh, that doesn't make sense, that that is sort of reflects things that are like people can present you with decisions without them understanding Bitcoin very
Mm,
well. So
mm,
you have to understand Bitcoin in order to um, know what a good investment is. And
mm,
if
mm,
you're not thinking that way, and you have to back yourself, as you said, um, that if you're backing yourself with bad ideas, that can drive you
mm.
crazy,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
have to I don't know how else to describe it, but like you
Well,
like I've seen people change over time in Bitcoin in ways that are seriously disturbing to me, right? So, and I know that part of the reason this happens is uh, they are lured into making decisions which are not based on like a long-term strategic position. They're based on ideology, uh, or just
mm,
nonsense,
mm,
right?
mm. Yeah, I think so. What we were just discussing is last night, and it can even start quite simply with like a feeling of what people call FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out. And that gets someone interested in Bitcoin. They learn about it, they think, oh wow, it's the greatest store of value man's ever seen. And they buy in, and everything they've told is that it is one thing, um, when the reality is it's quite another. And I think as we start to see the lay of the land change, and you know, I'm fairly convinced that at some point, you know, Bitcoin BTC's value will go to less than the value of Bitcoin Cash. And at that time, I think a lot of the people who, you know, they sold their Bitcoin Cash to buy back into Bitcoin, they're going to enter what I would call is FIFO. Fuck, I fucked up, which is basically a feeling of really realizing that for dogmatic reasons, they've been ignoring what they knew to be true. Because I think anybody who's been in the space for long enough must understand enough to be able to see that 1 megabyte is not a good strategy. And as Bitcoin Cash usage basically explodes, and they can see what on-chain scaling means for a global cash network, and what a global cash network means in terms of a store of value. I think that there may be knock-on mental health consequences for a lot of people who find themselves in that situation. I don't know.
Okay. So yes, I am okay. So this is something that I knew was going to happen when I started my show, because like I knew that the sensible people would either not split their old UTXOs, or they would get into Bitcoin Cash. Because I mean, to me, like Core has the advantage of being bigger, and it is possible that they will learn something. So it's not an absolute foregone conclusion, but they don't look like they want to learn anything to me. And the more that they sort of act like they need people to go along with them, rather than without presenting value. You see what I mean? Without showing that they know what is valuable. The more that the more crazy that you're going to have to get. And they have a completely inflexible way of doing things. So it's just about you have to accept a lot of craziness if you put yourself in the position of saying, like, well, clearly Bitcoin Cash could never win.
Yeah.
And sorry. What were you saying?
No, you go.
So no, okay. So I don't want to name names, but I think that you can. I mean, I think that you can see some people's mental states deteriorating over time, and all that you have to. So, like, part of what you have to understand to get into Bitcoin is that you need to know enough about Bitcoin to be able to avoid that. And this is sort of like when I first got into Bitcoin, I was like, oh, well, great. I mean, it'll just take over the world. It's perfect,
It's just going to work. How can it not work? Look at this delicately balanced set of economic incentives. The design is brilliant.
But now I've seen that
Bitcoin to skew it.
Now I've seen that Bitcoin can cause mass insanity. So if if you don't understand it well enough, so be on the lookout. And back to your psychotic episode, that's what being in Bitcoin was like, because you said you couldn't communicate with the outside world, and you couldn't for a while you couldn't even assess your own problems, right? Because you couldn't even think. You had weird messages in your brain that didn't make sense.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's kind of what Bitcoin was like. And anybody who to me, the problem was, let's find who does understand Bitcoin. That's mainly what I've been doing for the past couple of years, is who is left, who is still thinking. And that's kind of what I do with my show, is if you can appreciate satire, you have put yourself in a position where you are not risking your mental health. If you have put yourself in that position, then the satire is too disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's a very interesting point that you raised about who do you listen to? So when I came into this, I was just open to everything because I didn't know any personalities. I'd heard of Satoshi, I'd heard of Hal Finney. I didn't know who anybody was. And it was just through, consumption, a mass consumption of all Bitcoin related news articles, anything I could find, that I really learned the lay of the land. And I acknowledge that at the time I was lucky because I had 40 hours a week for, I don't know, it was like 10 weeks just to sit there and do that. And a lot of people wouldn't. And I often think back and wonder if I had not had that time and I had just bought BTC and I had not gotten into the nitty gritty of it and I was still holding BTC today and I looked at it without really going beyond our Bitcoin, beyond, the very basic stuff that's in the media. Maybe I've heard of Bitcoin Cash. Maybe I know, it's got something about its bigger blocks, whatever. Bitcoin is the real store of value. What would I say to people that I was engaging with on the internet? And it would probably be pretty similar to the guy who called me an idiot. I don't know. And so for a lot of people who don't have that amount of time that's needed to accumulate the knowledge to really understand Bitcoin, that's where it gets quite hard because you've got to invest a lot of time into, it's learning. It's hard learning.
So, right. So I think that it is about personality, because Bitcoin is kind of a system that's continuously evolving, and so you don't want to listen to crazy people, and so you can, if you look at the person, you can see who is acting more crazy and who looks like they just know what they're doing,
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean whatever they say is right. It just means that's somebody who can probably tell you something that you don't know.
One thing I've learned is that certain people, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, and it can even be certain people at certain times often have an agenda. And so I try to watch their actions from the perspective of trying to analyze how would that impact their agenda. And there's been a few people and a few things that have happened where they've done stuff that's been perceived by the community as disrespectful or a bad move from a PR point of view or whatever. But if you're actually looking at what's going on in the background and, oh, hello, cat, and thinking about it from the perspective of, well, if I was in that position and I had all this other stuff behind what I was doing, maybe that is actually the best course of action. And trying to understand how. So one thing that's really become apparent to me is that Bitcoin is much more than just a computer network, right? I mean, the computer network is what builds the tool, but really the real network is the people that use and manage Bitcoin. And they say that Bitcoin forms a small world network with a near complete graph at the center. And I believe that small world with the near complete graph is actually replicated in the real world. And that the miners are not working in isolation. They are talking to each other. They know what's up. I'm sure by now they all have a much better understanding of what needs to happen within Bitcoin for it to scale and become a long-term, a currency, a real money system. And
I mean, of course they do, because That's necessary for their business.
Exactly
So
right.
that's so yes, this is one of the ways that Bitcoin was like a body that was unable to see
Mm.
to its own needs, right? Because people thought you needed to be suspicious of miners when
Yeah,
in reality they are the ones who have the greatest immediate need to be profitable.
they have the
Uh,
most to lose, and that's kind of they have the most to lose by the system not getting to a point where it is actually self-sustaining and self-expanding.
and so far, like there's been so much value just getting all of the new Bitcoins that people haven't been thinking enough about transaction
No,
fees for a while.
they've been sitting there
So
collecting those block rewards and really not thinking about, well, that halves every 2 years. What does that look like in 20 years? And where do we need to get to replace that? And when you actually work it out, Bitcoin has to get basically global traction. Everybody, everywhere, all day, every day using Bitcoin. Or I don't know that it can get to the point where it replaces the block reward. It will never get cheap enough
yeah,
for people to
and
use it.
so I think so. First of all, I would say that it's not a bad thing inherently if the hash rate goes down, because what it's really about is who wants to argue,
Mm,
right? So to me, if the hash rate goes down, that just means people are more in agreement with one another. And uh, but uh, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, if the hash rate is small, that honestly means that people don't need to pay attention to Bitcoin, because
mm,
it is in everybody's incentive to examine costly signals,
mm.
and a signal that is not costly is a less important signal. Um,
Yes,
so yeah, I think that it is necessary at least for the Bitcoin hash rate to be the biggest,
yes,
and it
absolutely.
should be uh, it should be bigger. It should remain bigger with the expectation of staying big enough long term that it's going to be more than what you could get if you invented a new altcoin.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think
So, oh, sorry, yeah,
I was just going to say, I think the hash is just going to keep going up, and it's going to be a combination of things. It's going to be miners developing better hardware, miners getting access to cheaper energy, um, and that's going to drive the next level of competition. Because uh, even when there isn't an argument about whether to move to, you know, unlimited block size or 2 GB block size, or whatever the argument du jour is, um, even if it's only tiny, there's always an incentive to outcompete your competitors with hash, to win more blocks, because that is your profit mechanism. And I just it, I don't think the hash will ever stop. Oh, no, that's not quite true. At a point, the hash will cease to go up, but it's not for a long time. I think it's just going to keep going up almost exponentially, or in an exponential growth rate for the next long period of time.
okay, well, yeah, I sure hope so. Um,
And yeah, it's
so
that to me is the biggest signal that you can send to people, and that's part of the trust of the network. So when people know that they walk into a shop and they pay that coffee and they see a tick, and the merchant knows they see the tick, that transaction's confirmed, that builds trust, and then there's in the function of the network, and I think that's so important, that people know that they can just trust that whenever they use the network, it's always on, it's always available, and it just works.
Sure, and the hash rate is something that you can evaluate even if you know nothing about the rest of the world.
Exactly right.
To me, that's what's great about it is your computer can see the opportunity cost. So, and that enables this automatic consensus building mechanism. And
you can see that, yeah, there's a network.
Part of it. Oh, let me finish this one. Part of it is thinking about what is a good consensus, like what will people accept, and in order to do that, you need a comprehensive understanding of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So the miners need to understand Bitcoin in order to continue to be successful. So you don't. It's and now I think we are finally seeing that happen. Because I think before miners were just focused on thinking about the cheapest energy. But miners also have to be diplomats, because they need to make a block that other people will accept. And when the block is mined, they've expended energy. So they want to be as certain as possible that the block will be accepted before they mine it. And so they're the ones with that incentive. So
that comes back to this mirror of the Bitcoin small world network in the real world, because it is the miners that control the nodes that are in the small world network on the electronic side of this crazy cash system. The miners that control those nodes also talk to each other, and it is their collective decision about which strategy to follow in terms of upgrades and how the network is going to work, which will determine the direction for Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what anybody says on social media. It's, I don't know, 30 guys in a room.
Really. Doesn't even need to be that many.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but it's a surprisingly small number of people. And
so, since they've decided to be miners, why not let them follow their own incentive? Why not let them be the diplomats? You know,
they are the ones with the most to lose in this whole situation. And so they are going to do the thing that is in their best self-interest.
And not just diplomats, but the designers.
That's right.
Because protocol design does affect global adoption, right? So they have the incentive to think about what's going to be globally adopted and how to do it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they grow into that role of stewards of the network. And, I think because it will be in their interest to promote people to use Bitcoin. It will be in their interest to provide maybe free hardware or free access to networked services, specifically targeted at directing traffic and usage onto the Bitcoin Cash network.
Yeah, well, it's in their interest to figure out what will actually work.
That's right.
And so the Bitcoin dark age has to do with this separation of miners from developers.
Yes.
And like like it was so weird to me because I don't know how like to me it all seemed so obvious, and
Mm.
it was hard to find people who would even listen to me. So that's kind of what I was up to for a while.
Oh,
However,
yeah.
I am calling so that was the psychotic brain, because there were few neurons remaining that were working correctly and they couldn't find one another. But
That's a
once
great way to put it.
once these people who do understand Bitcoin have found one another, then it's like a functioning brain again.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
because
It
you
retrained.
can have organization and division of labor.
You can rebuild that synaptic network that that links you know your thought center with the parts that process the communication. And I think it's a very apt description, because I think before, everyone was all together in a bag of hurt, and people who were aware were kind of surrounded on all sides by an angry mob, and then someone's cut a hole in the bag. A lot of them have jumped out and now find themselves together, and so it's now a function of rebuilding that network, trying to bring as many people, trying to, it's like a process of enlightenment. And
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying going to meetups, and I've developed a talk which I think you listen to, which kind of tries to give people who maybe really, they've heard of Bitcoin, they know about cryptocurrency, maybe they've bought some BTC or some ETH or maybe even some BCH, but try to explain to them that it is not. I think the core issue is people approach this as, well, it's mainly because they don't understand it. Like they buy it, they don't know what it is, they don't know how it works, and so they don't realize that the product that they have bought is designed in such a way that it's going to give the people that use it a very poor user experience and really doesn't scale. And so trying to give them that understanding and knowledge of what the Bitcoin network is, who runs it, what's their incentive to run it, and what is the people that I'm speaking to's incentive to use that network over all other networks. And to me, that is basically the utility. It's cheap, it's fast, it always works. They don't need to almost understand it much more than that. But once you connect the dots on all of the background information of just how much goes into building a network that can manage 1 trillion transactions a day, and I think that's where it needs to get to. The amount of work that goes into doing that, why would they do that for 6 different networks? I keep getting these people, oh, there's going to be 5 coins at least, it'll never come down to 1. Well, why? Who's going to build that, replicate that network 5 times over? They'll try, but it's always going to come back to 1.
Well, why bother? I mean, why should people have to even think about that? That was always my problem with the altcoins, is I was like, why should people have to, like, it's a bad choice to have to make. Like, if we've already got a digital cash that basically works, why do you keep creating new ones? That's that is not what we need.
When I
And
finally realized what a misnomer full value token is,
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
Well, so that's a token that somebody has issued, which they are telling people they should expect to be able to use as currency.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when I saw that being advertised, that was kind of when it clicked that the whole thing was a huge, big, it's just a scam. Yeah. So I think the altcoin market is it's designed to suck value out of Bitcoin. Not necessarily deliberately, but that's exactly what it does. It just hoovers value from the non-functional chain into a series of ever lesser value, also similarly useless chains, and just completely fractures the market, creates a horrible user experience for anybody, you know, who's getting into this kind of market of all these tiny little coins. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay, so
I ran away.
What? Yeah, and so Bitcoin, for a while, Bitcoin was kind of like the story of the elephant and the blind people, and some people would say one person feels the trunk, and he's like, well, it's like a snake, or something, or another person finds the leg, and he says, well, it's like a tree. But not just that, it's that there were lots of lies around to try to make you not notice that Bitcoin is an elephant instead of a tree. And so, I always thought it's economics first. Economics is the most important thing about Bitcoin. But for a long time, I didn't understand how, I didn't understand that. I needed to explain that to people, first of all. And then once the crazy ideas took over, that was like an automatic thought stopper. You start talking, just talking, especially like in terms of like the bottom line, like what businesses need. Talk in economic terms. They're like, oh, you don't understand Bitcoin. It became a thought stopper.
I think there's a lot of people who think they understand how Bitcoin is traded, and so they think they understand how how its market moves, but they don't understand Bitcoin from a technical perspective. And they're not looking at it as a network of computers processing blocks in a way that resolves the Byzantine generals problem to create a decentralized peer-to-peer cash system. They're looking at it as, oh, well, it's new money. It's going to move in this way. We'll buy in when it does this, and we'll sell out when it does that. But they they drive the movement of the coins at the moment because it is used primarily as a speculative vehicle, and the market cap of Bitcoin is only so high because most of the moving of it is these multi-million-dollar speculator guys who are doing whatever.
Yeah, but if you don't see, that's the thing, is like most of the market moves appear to demonstrate quite a lack of understanding about Bitcoin. But if you don't understand it, the market will you will be open to being driven insane. So it's not like it's dangerous right away, but if you make you can make choices that you don't realize at first are leading you down a crazy path. So you have to plan for that with your own portfolio. Oh, so so another thing is, I knew that the price between BTC and BCH would be more unstable than other prices in Bitcoin, even though those are already crazy. And that has to do, well, I have a video on this called The Definition of Bitcoin. And it has to do with that. So look that up. But if you're choosing one or the other, you are choosing more instability, regardless of which one is going to win. But if you choose the side that isn't learning fast enough, then then it's going to be unstable in a a very unhappy way.
Yeah, you better have a very good strategy to exit your position quickly.
Yes. Yes.
When things I can move so quickly, and I mean, this comes back to that thing we were talking about, like how do you kind of filter what you read and who you interact with to kind of keep yourself sane. Because if you try to read everything and talk to everything and do everything at once, it will literally drive you insane. There is so much happening in Bitcoin. And what I ended up doing was I just stopped looking at the price of Bitcoin altogether. Like I literally, I think I look at it maybe once a month. And that was an enormously therapeutic change, because I found myself, and especially during that very volatile period in December, January, February, where the price would change, by huge amounts every day. And it just got so much. And I had to I deleted the app off my phone. I stopped even looking at it at all. So,
Oh, so that's very good advice. Yeah, I don't look at the price too much anymore these days, but yeah, I used to like to look at it a lot uh, earlier on.
yeah, yeah,
But that's part of what drives you crazy. But another part is just being around other people who are crazy.
mm,
And if you're kind of in a social dynamic where the people with some sanity remaining are distancing themselves, then you are sort of uh,
like
you're sort of
trapped in the mob.
you're sort of in
Yeah,
the center of a group that is just going to get more crazy as
yeah,
the the thinking people are kind of moving outward of their own accord.
yeah, that's right. I would love to know how many people just got chewed up and spat out by the politics that happen in Bitcoin, and who just left entirely and haven't come back and won't come back until they can see that, well, until it hits them in the face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, well, this is another thing that can happen to people in Bitcoin is they'll sell, it'll go up and they'll sell and they'll be like, and then it'll go up 10 times more, or it'll go down, and then a few years later, then it'll go up 10 times again. So, like these people get in and they feel like they did something amazing when they doubled their money or something. But if if they didn't, at the end of the day, what matters is what matters is how much you have when you end up. And if you think that ultimately only one ledger can win, like you're potentially losing a lot of ground that way if you try tricks that way. So what happens when people do this is they tell themselves that they haven't missed out. So that's why they get into a bunch of random altcoin ideas,
yeah,
regardless of how nonsensical they are. So earlier on in Bitcoin, you could just make straight up clones of Bitcoin, and people would buy that, and
yeah,
that reflects a very low understanding of Bitcoin
there's still a few of
because
them around, amazingly.
yeah, because fundamentally, I mean, what are you doing? Because fundamentally, it is it's about sticking together. That's kind of like how a currency is valuable. It's that
Mm.
all of society uses it. So anyway, these crazy people they decide that that's not true, because if it was true, then then they don't have a second chance. And if Bitcoin went up 10 times, ultimately that just means they have a 10th less Bitcoins than they could have had, even if they doubled their dollars at some point earlier. And so then you get, then all altcoins are like a regret market for that. But in order
I like
for
that term, regret market. I remember.
But the market will not reflect a better understanding of Bitcoin until the people who made mistakes are change their behavior. And that means that they're either going to all kind of lose together, or they're going to gradually learn on their own and adopt better habits.
I suspect the ones the ones furthest from the small world network of insanity that sits at the core of Bitcoin BTC, anyone who's managed to step back from that and realize that it is just a bunch of guys shouting nonsense at each other.
Yes.
will leave, and some of them will get out before the price is, and some will stay there till the end. And I'm really excited for the day when you can buy a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain on a Raspberry Pi, but there's only like 1,000 Raspberry Pis in the world, and you can still mine on it, but it's like a little hobby thing.
I've got my original core Bitcoin here, and I'm locked in my underground bunker.
That's right.
So I just have to keep hodling and wait for global adoption to happen somehow. I've got my Yap Stone.
I have an LN channel up and running with the last hub.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So I asked a question on my my Twitter account the other day, where I basically said, when does a BTC maximalist decide to sell? Like, have you thought about what would be a market signal that would tell you that you've made a mistake? And I asked it with a little cartoon that makes fun of them. So nobody was able to answer the question, other than one person who actually agrees with my position. So not a BTC maximalist, but none of them were saying that they have a strategy to get out when things or what their exit position looks like. So for a long time, it was like, it was hard for me to find people other than those kind of people with that kind of terrible mindset. And now I think people have been able to separate themselves by their ability to strategize a little better. And
sorry, go. You
and I think that people who do understand Bitcoin have formed alliances. So now before it was like just craziness everywhere, but now I am really seeing what seem to be islands of stability in Bitcoin. And those are the alliances of people who do have a comprehension or a comprehensive understanding of Bitcoin. So I recently watched a presentation from Jimmy Wynn of nChain, and like I couldn't believe what he was saying. So this presentation was like amazing. And he was saying stuff like, we need a protocol that's built on solid rock, not shifting sands.
I
And
know.
I was like, wow, like these people have devoted significant resources to being able to explain basic things about Bitcoin to people with a foolish mindset. And
Yes.
I and not only that, but they also understand the rest of Bitcoin. So to me, this is sort of like I've never seen to a company that looks like they have a comprehensive understanding of Bitcoin.
Mm.
But that that's what I saw in this presentation is Jimmy Wynn was just saying like, you know, we want Bitcoin to be globally adopted, and we have lots of real ideas on how to do that,
And
and
resources.
in order to accomplish that, miners there needs to be this connection between uh, mining and development, because the
Yes.
miners are the ones who have the incentive to think about how to do. Well, they have the most incentive, right? They have the most incentive to think about this stuff, um, and uh, and what I saw in this presentation is somebody who knows that they need that, somebody who isn't going to just react passively to whatever the developers decide they're going to do.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And so that is so that's why I said I think the dark age in Bitcoin is ending.
I
Is
saw that.
watching this presentation. And so you know, if you're watching this and you think N-Chain is evil or something, well, why don't you figure out what they did and do the same thing, and then you can have influence in Bitcoin development.
Mm.
But to me, uh, this is the first time I've seen this. It feels like this company fully understands Bitcoin, and I should say you could never fully understand Bitcoin, but they know enough about what is important that they can that they know how to strategize in a way that other businesses have not.
Yeah.
That's at least the impression that I am getting from
I
what
was
I've
asked.
seen.
I was asked. I was answering a tweet, and it was somebody just put up a question on Twitter. They said, why would any of you support the N-Chain roadmap?" And I don't know whether he was trying to solicit anti-N-Chain responses or what, but my response was pretty simple, which is that they are focusing on the right things. And I look at what they're doing. They're trying to professionalize that development cycle, and put miners in the place of being the ones who pay for it to happen, who decide what the focus of that development is. You know, they are supporting new wallets. And so this, I hope you know I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes, because I actually want to go back to something you were talking about before, which is
Please go ahead.
the what do you think the strategy of these hardcore hardline guys who are at the center of BTC, what is their exit strategy? And I think for those that really believe it enough, their exit strategy is actually the exact same exit strategy as my exit strategy, which is that I will hold and or it's slightly different. Mine is that I will get Bitcoin Cash whenever I can, and I will use it. I will spend it as money. I will spend it as cash. And when I can get more, I will get more. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to treat it like money. The idea being that at some point I will have amassed some of it, and it will be usable everywhere, and I can just go around and use it all the time. And you look at a lot of the memes that get floated around on our Bitcoin, and it's like the Neo with the spoon meme, you know, the
Oh
one
my
where
God. So you should always be worried when you see that, because the Matrix, the movie, makes the most sense if you imagine that it's about going into a cult rather than going out.
Right, okay.
Because you know, Morpheus is like, you know, I will show you the real reality. And and you know, one of the motivations for people to, well, it's just like what we've been saying, is you you have to back yourself. And if you've made a bad decision in the past, and you don't want to recognize it as a bad decision, then you rationalize what you've done.
They
So
shouldn't rationalize it as a bad decision, because they're seeing this future where they will actually be able to spend their BTC. But it doesn't come until Lightning is finished and there's a million gajillion channels open everywhere. And
sure. No, but what I'm saying is one of the reasons that people stay in a cult is they have to first of all, they put themselves in a bad position, right? Because they believe that, you know, whatever they're doing is going to you know, fix the universe or whatever,
elevate them.
Even though it is often something that doesn't really require a lot of thought to realize that it won't. Right.
And can you imagine being a guy at the center of that cult who was having doubts and who voiced those doubts? What would happen to you? You would be immediately ostracized, you know, thrown in with the frauds.
Yeah, and they think that they can control what people think by doing that.
But, and they think that matters.
Yeah. But really what happens is people will just reorganize. Eventually they will figure out who does understand Bitcoin and who doesn't, and they will organize along those lines.
We're trying to talk through this avenue, but it's clearly not working because all we hear is spastic moaning. We'll go this way and find a new way around.
Sorry, yeah. Well, I know I was going somewhere, but now I just I forgot.
Sorry, maybe I interrupted you.
But so I guess so let me conclude by saying that you should put your Bitcoin presentation online in a form with better sound, because it's one of the best. I mean, it's a great introduction to Bitcoin. I mean, yeah. I mean, to me, you are one of the best people just at explaining Bitcoin to people. So you need to get your stuff online, and or get your stuff in a form that has that's more has more viral potentiality, more ability to reach lots of people.
I was thinking of doing it in front of a TV, like Rick Falkvinge style, but we'll see.
You don't even have just do something.
I will make a much better version than what's up there now, because it's pretty woeful. But I'm new to all of this. It's the first time I've put one of my talks online, so I'm very glad that you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing your experience.
That's
And
all right.
yeah, anybody who doesn't like nChain, figure out how to be definitely more competent than them, because
yeah.
I don't I don't think
Uh,
I don't think you couldn't make a more competent company, but I would say it's the best one that I've seen yet.
I just look at them and I see an outfit from Jimmy on down, right through the dev team, and anybody that is attached to them seems to. I think that they're very focused on professionalism. I haven't seen them making inflamed remarks or really. They push back when they're pushed, which I think is absolutely fair enough. But they're really pushing that line of stability, and they're bringing everything back to. It's going to be something that you can rely on. You'll be able to build something on this, and you're not going to be reworking it every 6 months because the block format changed, or there's new opcodes, or there's this, or there's that. It's a stone foundation, and that's how can you not get behind that? That's
I mean, yeah. Well, I think that we should have a different discussion some other time on Craig Wright's style of communication, because I think you may have said something controversial there about not getting not making inflammatory remarks or something. But we will get back to that. But
I think
for now, I'm gonna say let's end things, because
cool.
my cat has been begging to me to feed him. So,
Sure.
but yes, we can have another discussion on that later on.
I would very much enjoy that. Thank you very much for having me on your show, Daniel. It's
Well,
been a pleasure.
thank you very much. Great.
No
Yes. Well, yeah. Thank you.
I look forward to an opportunity to get to meet you in real life. And anyway, we'll be in touch.
Okay. Great.